I just made the best build in Destiny 2. So recently, I'm sure you've been seeing builds all over the place about Combination Blow and Liar's Handshake. I will admit, it is one of the best builds I have seen in the final shape so far. But when I dropped an exotic cloak with Spirit of the Galanor and Spirit of the Star Eater, I made a build that completely outdoes Liar's Handshake in every single way. If you happen to roll this combo, you're in luck, because in the next 8 minutes, you will learn how to wield this monstrosity to its absolute limit, destroying everything that stands in your path. I don't want to keep you waiting, so let's get started. This build begins with our exotic class item. Bungie recently added a new type of exotic that goes in your class item slot, that can roll with 2 different exotic perks at the same time. And while this did make for some absurd builds, Bungie restricted this to allow only 8 exotic perks to be available in the perk pool. Nevertheless, this inspired several amazing builds, such as Spirit of the Liars and Assassin, which allowed you to spawn incredible amounts of threaded specters while covering every other aspect of a good build. But there is a build that is being severely overlooked in the D2 community, and that is a Spirit of the Galanors and Spirit of the Star Eater. Let me explain what each perk does. Spirit of the Galanor grants huge amounts of super energy, I'm talking half of the bar, for landing hits and kills with your preferred super. Spirit of the Star Eater increases the damage of our super for each orb of power we collect while the bar is full. After collecting the max of 6 orbs of power, we will get a whopping 70% damage increase in our next super. So just with this class item alone, we are already dealing incredible amounts of damage and getting half of our super back on use. Of course, we'll need the appropriate super for this role. I needed one that was able to balance both DPS and ad clear. Golden Gun just focused on DPS. It could only defeat 3 ads, so that was out of the question. Storm's Edge, Silence and Squall, and Tether were all more ad clear based, not really anything that could pump out massive DPS. So that left Silkstrike. This strand rubbing super really did do everything. Its helicopter ability was able to glide through ads, and its primary attack was able to do good chunks of boss health. Now that we have the basics of this build written out, let's move on to the subclass screen, where you may be surprised about what I picked. First off, Gambler's Dodge. This variant of the Hunter Dodge refills our powered melee upon use near an enemy, and is a no-brainer when we take into account said melee Combination Blow. This arc melee grants a stack of Combination Blow when defeating a target with it. We can have a max of 3 charges, and melees deal more damage the more stacks you have, up to 200% more damage. This would be great all in itself, but what makes it broken is the fact that it refunds our class ability, aka Gambler's Dodge, upon defeating a target. And this creates the ultimate loop where we get a kill with Combination Blow, dodge, get a kill, dodge, get a kill. Well, you get the idea. Now that's good and all, but with the addition of Threaded Spectre, our first aspect, this build gets elevated to greater heights. This strand aspect spawns a strand decoy every time you dodge that has 175 HP and explodes with threadlings every time it is near an enemy, is destroyed, or time limit runs out. Not only that, but enemies will target this decoy before you, making it just as good as invisibility, if not better. But surely you are thinking, you can probably only have one at a time, right? Or at least a cooldown between uses. But no, this aspect has no entity limit and no cooldown. Yes, this does mean we can have decoys every single dodge of our chain, and yes, this is broken, but we will be taking advantage of it while it lasts. Now, before you think this build can't get any better, let me just tell you, it gets better. Because with our second aspect, Winter Shroud, everything freezes. This stasis aspect applies 60 slow to nearby enemies when dodging, and 100 slow freezes a target. So if you simply dodge twice in the Combination Blow loop, you will freeze everything around you, amounting to a huge damage boost against said frozen enemies, and dealing shatter damage to everything else. Now for our grenade, we will be taking the Grapple. This is for movement to add some flexibility to this build. The Duskfield grenade is also a very solid choice as it adds crowd control to this already amazing build, but the choice is yours. Next, let's move on to our fragments, starting off with Facet of Dawn, which gives us Radiant on powered melee hits and final blows, which Combination Blow will be giving us all the time, so we will have 100% uptime on Radiant. We can take advantage of this by using Facet of Hope, which will increase our dodge regeneration speed while having an elemental buff, which Radiant is. So this will be a backup in case our melee and dodge wear out. Next, we'll take Facet of Devotion, which will grant light transcendence energy when defeating targets afflicted with stasis and strand debuffs, on top of the darkness energy we already get. This plays very well with Grapple as it happens to sever, making it a great way to get Transcendence energy fast. Fourth, we'll take Facet of Purpose, which will grant us a certain buff based on our subclass super we are using. In our case, Silk Strike, it'll grant us Woven Mail, which is a straight 45% damage reduction from all sources. Next, we'll take Facet of Protection, which will grant us 15% damage reduction when near an enemy, which we will need to be in order to utilize this build correctly. Lastly, we will take Facet of Ruin, which will increase the size and damage of our Shatter when freezing a target with Winter Shroud. And before I get into anything else, I would just like to say that there is a Mobalytics guide down in the description for you to plug this onto your character with just a single click. Now that we have the subclass screen out of the way, let's move on to armor mods. On our helmet, we will be taking a copy of Dynamo and Hands-On to grant us super energy on both our dodge and melee of our combination blow chain. On top of that, we will take Solar Siphon to spawn Orbs of Power on rapid Sunshot final blows. On our gloves, we will take Heavy Handed to drop an Orb of Power on powered melee final blows, along with Impact Induction and Momentum Transfer to grant grenade energy on melee hits and vice versa. On your chest piece, you can run any combination of reserves and resistances that you would like. On our boots, we will be taking Recuperation for the instant heal on Orb of Power pickup, along with 2 pairs of Absolution to get huge amounts of everything energy every time we pick up an Orb of Power. Lastly, on our cloak, we will take Distribution to further lower our ability recharge rate when dodging, along with the Reaper and Bomber, which will make final blows after dodging spawn an Orb of Power and grant grenade energy respectively. Now, before we end this video, I'd like to go over my personal favorite weapon recommendations that are hugely beneficial to this build. For our exotic, we will be taking Sunshot. This exotic hand cannon boasts incredible ad clear and is at the top of the meta right now. This can be replaced with other ad clearing weapons such as Graviton Lance or Trinity Ghoul. Next, we want a weapon that can deal with beefier enemies such as champions. I personally use the Call, but weapons like Riptide, Loaded Question, and Indebted Kindness also work just as good. Finally, in our heavy slot, we will want a weapon to deal with the bosses. Any sort of rocket launcher, machine gun, grenade launcher, or linear fusion rifle will work just fine. Some of my top picks are Apex Predator with Reconstruction, Edge Transit with Reconstruction, Doomed Petitioner, and Hammerhead. Well, now you know the ups and downs of this build and have full mastery over it. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out a ton and I truly do appreciate it. But I've said what I have to say, so DestinyVerse out.